To moderate our panel, I'd like to introduce Becca Clausen, President and CEO of Second Harvest Food Bank. Becca?
Thank you for coming. This is great. We've got all kinds of folks here, and we appreciate our panelists. We do have I think a substitution for one person, but basically what I'd like to do is have you sort of introduce yourself, and we only, you do have a microphone, great. So introduce yourself, say who you're here to represent, and then just how long you've lived in the community, basically, around here. We want to go as fast as we can with the introductions so we can get to some great questions. Jeff?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Robinson. I'm the current president of the Muncie City Council, here representing the city of Muncie. I've lived in this community my entire life.
I am Neil Kring, and I am a neighborhood pastor on the south side of Muncie, and I work in really 3 neighborhoods mostly, Thomas Park, Avondale, Industry Neighborhood, and South Central. And and I live there too.
My name is Corbin Black. I'm the HR manager at Mercix Corporation. I also serve at a weekly basis at Blood and Fire. So I think I was brought because of Mercix, but I'm also proud to be here on behalf of Blood and Fire as well.
I'm the replacement fill-in. I'm Brock Williamson. I work with Open Door Health Services, I think over that way. I'm a community health worker. We focus on social determinants of health. Oh yeah, and I've lived here for my whole life.
I'm Sarah Renee. I'm the random neighbor that was invited here today. I work in harm reduction, street outreach with Neil, and then I also work in most of the different neighborhoods here in Muncie. This time around, I have lived in Muncie for 13 years.
Hello, I'm Jackie Hanneman. I am the Executive Director of the Ross Community Center, and I'm not from here, but I've been here at this time for 7 years, but I first came to Muncie about 15 years ago.
Just hang on to it, Jackie, because
Okay.
we'll start with you and come back this way. How about that? So there's a lot of great. This is probably my 4th time seeing the film, but something new comes out just about every time. Tell me, who's seen it for the first time today? Raise your hand. Great. Thank you. So, Jackie, what I'm wondering, and this can be for anybody, but what rang true for you as you lead the organization that you lead while you were watching it? What rang true about some of the things that those folks were talking about?
Well, I mean, all of it rang through. The Ross Center, amongst the things that we do, is we have a weekly free community market. Note, I use the word market, not pantry. And the reason why I use market is because going to ask for food it really batters your dignity. Being in a food line, knowing that you've worked your entire life. One of the things that I didn't see in the movie were seniors. We see a lot of seniors at our market. So to answer your question about what rang through, people who are working, the money just doesn't stretch. People that have worked their entire lives, are now in Social Security, and now the money that they hope to retire on does not work anymore. They can't. Children, families. We talked a lot about access. And so all of it rang through. There is one thing that I'll talk about later that I didn't see in the movie.
Go ahead. And is it Sarah? I'm sorry, I didn't catch
Yes.
her. Okay. So Sarah, that question or anything else you want to share after just your impressions about seeing that?
So as someone who has throughout the years experienced food and housing insecurity and everything, so quite a few things rang true, and as well as like someone who is currently like receiving food stamps, even though I am and Indiana Medicaid, Indiana, the health insurance and everything. Just knowing that if I guess I'll just give an example. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So this is like totally personal, so please don't take it out of this room. I'm just kidding. So I work several different jobs. In like the nonprofit sector, I lost my job a while back, so I had to go back onto food stamps. Sorry, I'm like getting like.
Good.
It is hard to get out of it, I guess. So you are on food stamps, you are on insurance through the state. You know you can't afford anything, housing included. I do own my house and everything, so that does help mortgage-wise and stuff. But so you're in this weird flux, and you have to like figure out how to work through that constantly. I was recently offered more hours at a job, which means that I will lose my food stamps and I will lose my health insurance. The job does offer health insurance through, like being employed there, but if I do take that insurance, I will not be able to even afford it, or a doctor's appointment, or a medication. So it just makes it like a hard, you have to figure out, like I said, how to work through it. I don't know what else. Like, what else do I?
A lot of red tape, basically.
There is a lot of red tape and everything. So you have to like figure out how to balance everything constantly. And if you make over, like I'll be making a couple of $100 over the income limit for the food stamps and for, like insurance. So it's all gonna be gone.
Thank you, Sarah. Brock, what about, do you see folks at Open Door in your position? That are in that
we
spot?
primarily focus on social determinants of health, so barriers to access to food, insecurities, about everything that was, housing, transportation. I believe there are, I could be wrong on this, but I think there's 768 zip codes in Indiana. 47305, where Open Door is the 17th most impoverished zip code in Indiana, and it's not like Delaware County's, exactly much better than that. But yeah, so like Sarah, it's mostly putting Band-Aids on and helping people identify the least crappy option of survival, especially if you talk about rural folks. Let's say you live in Gaston, you're going to choose gas money to get in here for maybe food pantries, or you're going to eat at the Dollar General for overpriced processed foods that are going to lead to high cholesterol and other poor medical outcomes. I mean, those determinants are really 35 to 55% of all health outcomes when it comes to physical and mental well-being, not to mention just that the red tape and the bureaucracy and everything else is just slapping a Band-Aid on it, and it's a systemic problem. It's not just one organization's issue, or to champion it on your own, because you can't. And to access such things as food pantries, it's expensive to leave work. I mean, as they were telling, let's say, and if you're working multiple jobs and you're using the bus, you're not going to be able to access Monday through Friday that there's 2 food pantries here or there. You have to pick and choose, and it's really just picking the worst, best option that is available to you.
Going back to the food pantry thing too, it is super time consuming. If you are in like a transportation kind of thing, you have to figure out, people have patterns. I mean, like they know which food pantries to hit at which times, and it is a day-long process. So, and not to mention just like the barriers that are out there to even get into a food pantry or to access the food that is in a food pantry. It's insane. A lot of people do not have the government-issued IDs. A lot of people don't meet the criteria that is set up that the food pantries require. I'm talking like government and as well as like nonprofit or private food pantries and stuff as well.
Corbin, I have a question for you. So in your HR work at Mersix, thank you. So you're the employer here, and so of course at the end, one of the solutions is to pay a living wage. So have you done some work with that kind of situation, looked at some of those kind of things for your...
Yes. So I'm just going to briefly touch on, I think, all the questions that have been posed so far. I really do want to give my compliments to the creators of this video. I mean, from so many different angles of how things are presented, statistics, all that stuff. I mean, it just does a really great job in encapsulating that. So I wanted to say that. To her point, as far as picking and choosing and being the employer, so we do have contract associates at our factory, and say for example, they may be on some form of assistance, and I mean we will have them choose to where they want to remain a contract worker, because maybe by going up and taking that pay increase, it will push them out of some of the assistance that they need to be at, or like she said, I mean, she's having to pick and choose between her medical insurance, and maybe she has, to Brock's point, I mean, something or a prescription that it doesn't make sense to be on our plan, or I mean, she relies on that. So I see that. And I was happily surprised to see the standard wage on there at the 18. So prior to COVID, it was approximately, for Delaware County, it was about $16. So I knew it was going to be roughly about 18. But even with inflation, I don't think that number is probably accurate. It's probably higher than that. And then especially when you add on what the veteran said in there about having internet access and all that stuff. I mean, when you're talking about that, you're talking about base bones living. You're talking about just having a home over your head and just surviving. No frills, no eating out, nothing like that. So I hope I addressed what you asked.
Absolutely, yeah. And Neil, what are you seeing in your work in areas and communities? I know you're deep into making sure people have what they need, their basic needs, but I'm sure you run into some of these, issues all the time with folks.
Yeah, first I want to say, Sarah, thank you for coming. Do you know how hard it was to get a neighbor to come and be on a panel like this to talk about the real challenges when there are literally hundreds that I know who could have sat up here and told their stories? So thank you for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Sarah.
I think the thing that I see the most is sometimes our solutions to some of these things are just too simplistic. The creation of jobs, I mean, that sounds like the right answer, right? The creation of good jobs that pay well, that sounds like the right answer. But what if you have an addiction issue and you can't pass a drug screen to access that job, like so many folks in my neighborhood? So there's all these job opportunities available, and then the very people that those jobs were created to help support cannot have access to those jobs. Well, and we could say, well, why is that? Well, how many addiction resources do we have in our community? Not that many. And I think I think we could look at some of the bigger sort of systems, like we are, a good-sized community that has a 30% poverty rate, which is very high. That means that 1 out of every 3 people could likely not just have struggles accessing food, could become homeless soon. And we have not seen the sorts of coordinated efforts in our community. There's lots of individual efforts from organizations or different places to try to alleviate some of those burdens. But we have never heard from city government. I'm sitting next to a mayoral candidate, that's why I'm saying this. We have never seen strategic initiatives to lift up families out of poverty in Muncie. There have not been strategic efforts put forward, and it's almost as if we are unwilling or having a hard time acknowledging the challenges of living in a place where there are such high rates of poverty. And so many people just go on living as they had been living, And then there are places, South Muncie, East Muncie. These are places where you have large communities of folks who are just struggling in ways that so many other folks in Muncie just can't even understand and connect with. And so just being there, being with people, hearing their stories, walking with them in the challenges that they're facing. I believe those are the ways that we are together going to create some solutions more than just the kind of simple things. And of course, yes, I understand we need jobs, but we also need to get people into housing. We also need to, what are we going to do for kids who are struggling at school and then they get suspended or expelled and they're missing 2 meals, like simple things like that. We're struggling to figure out even some of those sorts of things. So I can kind of know and understand those things, not that I have the solutions for those, because they're like my next door neighbors and the friends down the street and the kids that come play in the parking lot and the people that show up when we serve hot meals on Thursday nights. So I think we need some type of strategy in our community for addressing the high rates of poverty that we are experiencing here. So that's some of my thoughts.
Pressure's on. Yay, thank you. So I'll give you just a second, because that's a lot of pressure there, Jeff. I'll let you give you time to think about it. I just want to say that at Second Harvest Food Bank, after we saw this, I had to march myself to the HR department and make sure that we certainly were not paying people under the $18 wage, and there were a few. And so I immediately changed that, because we could not, do what we do without our employees and then our many, many volunteers. But I certainly didn't want to put anybody in a position, and we were starting people at what we thought was a great wage, to begin with, and then find out that it's so much higher. So, I didn't want to be, one of those people that they whisper about that because we don't pay the living wage. So that's. It's difficult. It's difficult even at that. Even at that, I'm not sure that we raised it to the point that those folks are gonna have what they need. All right, Jeff, it's your turn.
Yeah, and this, and same with Sarah. This is something that hits home for me. My parents would kill me, but I grew up in a food insecure household. We had food. We did have food, but it was. A lot of the same things over and over. It was, big pots of vegetable soup, or it was beans and rice and things like that. And, truth be told, even as an adult, until 4 or 5 years ago, I myself struggled with this. I've worked in nonprofit organizations my entire career, and those of us who work in the nonprofit sector in this community know that we do it because of the passion, not necessarily for the money. And we all know working in nonprofits in this community can be a struggle, in terms of insurance, pay, things like that. So it hits home for me. Growing up, I was not a good student. I ended up dropping out of high school because I was just a poor student. And not all of that was because of the food insecurity, but some of it certainly was. To Neil's point, we have so many nonprofit organizations in this community that are just doing great work, and especially in this area, Second Harvest Food Bank being one of those. We've got Inside Out, we've got, the Soup Kitchen. I saw Loretta here earlier. So many organizations working towards helping address this issue. The United Way of Delaware County, they refer to it, I believe, I don't know if they still do, but used to refer to it as ALICE, Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. It is a real problem in our community, and these nonprofits that are doing great work in this community, to Neil's point, there is some siloing that happens. There's not that one central force, and I don't want to make generalizations, and I know I am. There are organizations that are collaborating. There are organizations that are working together, but we can certainly do better. And, we've got a lot of people where we're very fortunate in Muncie. Muncie is routinely ranked the most philanthropic community in the state of Indiana. And it's because of the time and the resources that our citizens, as well as our nonprofit organizations, our philanthropic organizations, the foundations and such, it's because of everything that they provide to this community. We have good people here, people who want to help, just like the people we saw in the film. We have to do a better job of pulling our resources together. We have to do a good job as a city, as a county, to provide resources to these organizations. And when I say city and county, I mean city and county government. We can do a better job of providing resources, whether it's financial, whether it's logistical. We can do a better job in serving our people. And is it Brock? Brock mentioned the area code. I remember, and I thought it was the 47302 area code, and maybe I saw, there's some people here from the George and Francis Ball Foundation. One of the most staggering statistics that I've heard was through the Community Action Network, the CAN network that the George and Francis Ball Foundation is leading. And the 47302 area code has a 10-year life expectancy less than the 47304, and those two zip codes touch each other. 10-year less life expectancy in 47302 than 47304, and we are in the same city. We have a lot of work that we need to do in this community, and we've got the people and the resources and the organizations to do it. We just need to do it together and work together.
Thank you, Jeff. That's right. Thank you. So we have a lot of, you all are representing the community in lots of different ways. We have folks here who are class members from a class at BSU. We have folks who run agencies here. We have funders here. We have interested community members. So what we're looking for, and I believe Robbie has the microphone, if you have something you want to ask of the panelists or you just want to throw it out to the group in general, just raise your hand and we're going to run Robbie all over this whole auditorium. So he'll bring you the microphone and just if you have something in your mind that you would like a comment, something that you want to, an affirmation. I think Dave, even that helped with the film, would be open to answering a question.
Hi, I don't know who to address this to, but I want to know more about the Good Wages Initiative. Is that
Good Wages Initiative? Have you been a part of that? Yeah. Okay.
What did she say?
Good Wages Initiative.
The initiative that was mentioned on the film. No, I have not.
Okay. Dave, can you talk to...
Yes. It's an idea we got from two nonprofits in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And it's at the moment it's just Marion County, so Indianapolis, but we'd like to see it grow. And we certify employers who meet the standard and publicize that so that they get credit for that, both with people who use their services and with people who might consider employment with them. So it launched last April. It's the nonprofit is Employ Indy, and that's, I guess, what I can say about it.
Okay, does that answer your question? That's a little more information about it. Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Having good wages is extremely important. All right, anybody else have a question or a comment? Right here in the middle, I believe. She's from Open Door.
So, Mr. Robinson, I just want to know, like, with you being a candidate for mayor, what are your plans to kind of push this, or maybe push the Good Wage Initiative, or push the collaboration of agencies to try to put a dent in the food insecurity and the poverty levels? Because it's something, I've been here all my life, and it's something that has been ongoing all my life. Mm-hmm. So as a candidate for mayor, like, what are your thoughts on the next steps?
Yeah, well, and I mentioned it earlier in my comments, we need to start working together. And I think city government has a strong role to play in leading that effort and providing additional resources to organizations that are doing good work. I think and to talk a little bit about the last question as far as fair wage initiatives, I'm somebody that thinks that, there are organizations and corporations that come to our community, they ask for tax abatements, they ask for infrastructure improvements, they ask for the city to provide subsidies to help them get going. We also have, local companies that expand and they ask for tax abatements on whether it be equipment or expansion to add those new jobs. Something that we're looking into right now, myself and a colleague on city council, is looking at adding some requirements to those tax abatements. You want to be fair across the boards, but so you don't want to tell one employer, well, yeah, we'll give you the tax abatement, but you've got to pay $18 an hour and you've got to provide insurance, and then not do that for someone else. So we're looking at and it came up with a recent tax abatement regarding a low-income housing development on the southwest side at Tillotson and Memorial. We don't have any of those requirements right now. It really is on a case-to-case basis who we give those tax abatements to. I'm somebody that thinks that we need to set a standard that if we're going to provide local resources, taxpayer money, there has to be some requirements of that organization, and I would push to make that one of those requirements. We have folks that come before us, and we haven't had it too much in my time on council, but we've had at least one that has come to us, and I know there were several members of council that voted against that abatement because the wages were simply too low. It was $12 an hour. $12 an hour is not a livable wage, and there was no insurance to boot. So, I'm certainly not here as a mayoral candidate. Thanks, Neil, for exposing me. Appreciate it. But I am happy to answer any of those questions because we do need to do a better job. This is something that has been with us as a community my whole life. I'll be 45 years old next month, and these are the same issues we've been talking about my entire life, and I've not seen anything done about it. Where I'm fortunate is I have a good network because I've worked in nonprofit organizations my entire career. I know Becca, Robbie, Loretta, I know the folks at the foundations, and I know that all of these people are willing to sit down at the same table. We just got to figure out the best way and what that looks like for everybody, and we have to have somebody leading the charge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? Somebody else have a question, comment, thought? Okay.
Just thinking out loud and listening to what everybody's been sharing for the last hour, we have 2 zip codes where there's a budding zip codes with a 10-year life expectancy difference. We have a really good reputation around the state for philanthropy, but yet we have a very high poverty rate. The city of Muncie has put together an action plan, long-term action plan to look at city development. We have a high addiction rate that prevent candidates from getting a job. We have a lot of different organizations working as separate silos with lack of coordination. So my question is, how can we put together a master plan that coordinates all these different pieces, this huge puzzle? Some of the pieces are missing. How do we put this all together and coordinate? We have all these different wonderful nonprofit agencies in town that are doing their own thing, which are great, but there's no coordination of all that. And we're just nibbling at the edges. We're not really getting to the heart of the matter. So my question is, how do we coordinate all this? Because if we don't, as you just mentioned, this has been going on for 45 years. If we don't coordinate it, it's going to continue without any difference, and it's not going to get any better.
Let me first, if you don't mind, say something. So I want to bring to light the George and Francis Ball initiative that's going on, Cradle to Career. I would be completely remiss if I didn't bring that up. It's kind of based also on the Promise Neighborhood, and I was a part of a Promise Neighborhood in South Carolina, and I was so excited to see that they had applied for the grant. I told them not to be fearful because we applied 4 times, finally got it the 4th time around.
Can you provide just a quick context as what Promise Neighborhood is?
Sure, Promise Neighborhood. But let me just say, the George and Francis Ball is adopted the Cradle to Career, and that's really probably a better term for you to understand. It's basically wrapping your arms around children that live in poverty, and they've chosen specific poverty areas and specific schools that they're focusing on in the community. And basically, you wrap your arms around those children from the time they are born, and there is supports for the children and the family all the way until they either get to college or they get out for a career. I've seen it work all over the country. It was first started in Harlem, a guy named Jeffrey Canada, and he actually had that idea, and he started it just on one road, one street in Harlem, and then it just sort of went from there. Now it's an amazing initiative, and because of that, there's actually a federal grant called the Promise Neighborhood Grant. So I would say that what George and Francis Ball Foundation is doing is an amazing model. However, they're taking what is basically the most impoverished area with the most families with the most impoverished children in those families and really concentrating on that area. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm thinking we just, find a way to expand that model. The model already exists, and good heavens, those people have done an amazing job. It's just how do we then expand it to areas that are more wider areas. They knew that they had to focus because you have to focus in a certain area to begin with and be successful. That's what Jeffrey did up in Harlem. He knew he couldn't take on Harlem. He had to do it one street at a time. So that's what happened. So I'm sorry if I took it out of your mouth.
No, and honestly, before I pass the mic to Neil, I was also going to give a lot of credit to the George and Francis Ball Foundation. This Cradle to Career initiative and particularly the Community Action Network, the so-called CAN network. I'm a member of the Post-Secondary Educational Attainment Network there, and I know they have a number of other areas helping, to Becca's point, that Cradle to Career initiative, and to expand that, and it's a fairly new initiative, and these are big problems that don't get solved overnight, so you can only hope to move the needle as you go. And I think the George and Francis Ball Foundation deserves all the credit in the world for the work that they're doing. It's very important work.
Yeah. Let me say one more thing just to say I'm a part of the Family and Community Engagement CAN as well as Wraparound Supports, that one. And just wanted to say these CANs that he's talking about, that's where the model of organizations working together, that's where you're witnessing it. So it's being witnessed within those groups that it's sort of affinity groups. They have that in mind. And so the model exists. The idea, the question is how can we expand it, I think. Neil?
Yep. Just to clarify, we do have some other CAN organizations on the panel. So we do have Ross Center, we have Open Door, we have several in the build. So I think several in this room. So I think that's a good example that, there are quite a few nonprofits involved. Do you have a number off the top of your head or not? 40 plus. There you go. 40 plus organizations are already involved in the CAN model with the Cradle to Career. Thank you.
I think one of the challenges with a community like ours is actually, shifting power and resources to people who are affected by the specific challenges. But it's just, I went to college, I know how to talk in certain spaces, and I'm often welcomed into places that my neighbors are not welcomed into because maybe they don't talk the same, or maybe they can't read, or maybe they wouldn't even know the people who might invite like a group of people to a meeting. And so I think until we can get neighbors, like people who live in Muncie, people who are struggling with some of the issues that we're trying to solve, involved not just in the participation, but the decision making in some of these things. I do not think that we will, I don't think we'll accomplish any of these strategic efforts. Like we can't rely on city government to just do it alone. We can't rely on organizations that often are led and managed by people who do not live in the places where they're serving. What's that? Yeah. Yeah.
I think Sarah has a comment.
Yeah, go ahead and pick up on that.
What were you going to say?
To a fault.
Do you want me to? No.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Okay. So going off of like what Neil was saying and stuff, like getting people that are actually like experiencing these kinds of things and stuff at the decision-making table and everything, I think that would help break down a lot of those barriers. George and Frances Ball Foundation, whatever, I don't even know half of what they do. I hear about their names all the time. But are they in the community? I mean, like, are they, the people that are there doing the things? They're giving money out and everything. So, like, but what if we could, like, get other people on board with all of that, I guess? I'm not dissing George and Frances Ball at all. That's probably, like, a bad thing. But did you want to say something?
Yeah. I just wanted to follow up on something. So the question was about collaborations. And as my colleagues were saying, the George and Frances Ball has done a fantastic job in creating the cans. There are many collaborations helping in our community.
But most
happening.
People don't even know about
And that's the point I was going to say. I think our big problem is communication. We are not explaining everything that's been going on. So, for example, Neil, Sarah Renee and I are in the same community. Neil and I are in Thomas Park, Avondale. Sarah Renee is in South Central, the 47302 zip code. For example, we collaborate with the Ross Community Center with Second Harvest every Friday. We have a free community market where we serve over 450 people every Friday. At the height of the pandemic, it was 682 people on a Friday. So we do it with Second Harvest. We also have First Presbyterian contributing. We work with Open Door. Open Door has just begun a fantastic program called the Neighborhood Ambassadors, where they come to the different places in our community. The Ross Center, the Common Market, the library, and I don't know, there's several other places where they go, and they sit down and work with the resources, helping people with resources. How can we help you with not only health care, but child care, housing, connecting you to resources? We work with IU Health. IU Health comes and does health fairs. We work with Ball State, with the social work department, the nutrition dietetics department. We work with many, many different people. Like at the Ross Community Center, we have over 25 different collaborations, and that's just my organization with other places, the Healthy Lifestyle Center. So I think, as Sarah Renee was saying, our issue is that we are not communicating everything that we're doing. But communication is not the only thing. And if I have a second, I just wanted to mention one more thing, which is I said that I did not see in the movie. One of the things, we talk a lot about food access. We talk about the fact that people don't have enough food. We talk about the fact that people work very hard and they still don't have enough money to buy food. Housing is a big problem, as Neil was saying. All of my colleagues touched on very, very important points. But one of the things that I did not see in the movie and that we see every single day is food education. Food is there. We give food away, but people don't always eat it. because they do not know what it is. So one of the things that we do at our market is that we share recipes. This is what you can do with a rutabaga. This is what you can do with the 9 cases of jicama that Second Harvest so gently gave us. This is what you can do with it. Okay? This is what you can do with a chayote. And you do it. One of the things that is also very important in all of this that will take to the community building. As I began by saying, it's about dignity. And one of the things that we do, I know many of us do, I know Loretta does it at the Soup Kitchen, I know Neil does it at his Thursday night community dinners, we do it at the Ross Center, Blood and Fire does it, is community building. It's about welcoming the people and saying, here you go, how are you? So one of the things we do at our market is that, how are you doing? And letting them know, this is not charity. This is not charity. This is not because you're poor. This is friends helping friends through challenging times. And the first time you tell people that, they're like, what? No, this is not charity, my friend. You are going through some difficulties. We are here to support you. We have the resources. We're here to support you. And it's asking people how they're doing. Because, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think we have somebody in the back that had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah and Jackie. A lot of nodding heads out here. Sunny?
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question, mostly for the panelists, but everyone in the room. We keep talking about having neighbors at the table, asking them to be involved in the decisions that we're making. And I attend the CAN meetings, and one of the things that we struggle with, and we talk about every time, is how do we get the neighbors to the meetings? These are not closed meetings. They're open to everyone to come and share what we're doing, what we think the ideas are, but we need to hear the voices of the community. And I think that's what's different about this community, maybe than the 45 years ago that Jeff mentioned, is that the organizations that are here doing the work now do want to hear from the neighbors that we're serving. We're not trying to make decisions on their behalf. We want to hear their voice. And so maybe someone has a suggestion how we can get the neighbors to these meetings so that we can hear what they have to say.
Invite us.
Yeah, any recommendations of how to reach? Is it through local churches? Is it through other orgs? Publicly, media? What are your thoughts?
I think be involved. Be involved in our neighborhoods. Be involved with us. Come visit us. Walk the streets with us. Get to know your own neighbors.
Yeah, I just had 2 or 3 people out here in the audience say, yeah, go to the neighborhood.
One thing we got to do is, it's all about trust. These people are not going to come unless you build a relationship and they feel they can trust you, because, they've been through hell. They're going through hell. I mean, can you imagine putting your kids to bed hungry at night? And I don't know the answer. I don't know how to get them to, how to build that trust, but repeatability is one way. And I know Jackie does that. We do that. And when after 4 or 5 or 10 times they see that smiling face and they hear those friendly comments, well, maybe I can trust this person. But it's trust and relationship building is what it comes down to get them to come to these meetings so we can all work together.
I've got one more hand. I'll be right back.
We got somebody up here that wants to say something while you're going.
I was just gonna. What's your name? Yeah.
Loretta.
Loretta. I met you, Loretta. I'm sorry, but yeah. My point was to when you're dealing with disenfranchised folk that, to Neil's point, they're not welcome because of how they look, how they dress, how they talk, and you want them to come here, but the system's already failed them. What does it take? How do you engage these folks without displacing more trust and putting them in a worse situation of another entity or false hope of a promise that's going to make things better. And those are that's a crux of the problem of staying, the resiliency in communities to a fault, where they stick together and they can do it on their own, but your generational poverty or barriers to these things. And that is a huge aspect to the community involvement, meeting these folks in. Yeah, I don't have an answer. I'm just saying, you see that every day.
Okay, Neil has one too. Go ahead.
All right, my name is Allison Quirk, and I work for Muncie Community Schools. And so in listening to this conversation, I would just like to take an opportunity to share, and I do have information for the volunteer fair, but I can hopefully provide an opportunity to be a common thread in bringing Second Harvest into our schools, Cradle to Career. We have some newer initiatives that we're going to be pushing. Most of our schools have a monthly food pantry. They call them different things. We're going to get away from calling them food pantries for the same reasons that have already been established. We're going to go into themed family engagement nights that will be called the Big Ideas. And as Sunny has mentioned at other public engagements, and sharing the idea that we want all of our kids, we have to start cradle all the way through school to career. We want all of them to have big ideas about their futures. That would give people an opportunity to be in the neighborhood, in the schools, providing a volunteer opportunity if you're able to connect with families and maybe even share additional resources that are in the community. So,
thanks. I'm going to hear what Neil said. He thought he had a solution.
I have no solutions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any solutions. Just some mild grumblings and some observations.
Observations. That's it.
Since I've been doing neighborhood stuff on the south side, I get called all the time. Can you get some people to come to a meeting for this or for that or whatever? And the reason why there maybe are a few people in the community that get called to bring people to meetings is because no one else knows some of these people, who some of these folks are. And I think with this word was thrown around, building trust and having trust-based relationships, at some point, if we want to do this kind of work together, we have to build trust-based relationships in the places where they are, because they're not, we even started a family engagement council at Southview Elementary School. And I know so many parents, but it is so hard to get anyone to show up to that meeting. There's 4 or 5 folks that show up consistently because they have transportation, because they're used to sitting in meetings, because they know what to do when you show up for a meeting. But there's a whole lot of other families who likely aren't going to be able to come because the bus doesn't run that late, or because they are at work, or because they don't feel like they will be welcome in a meeting. So kind of creating spaces, and the way that I've done it in our community is I just go door to door. I just hang out on people's porches. I mean, that's where we talk about stuff.
Sarah had a...
Well, I just wanted to just interrupt Neil because I do that all the time. Also, this is survival mode. There's no culture or anything. You're not thinking about the culture around the food you're eating. You're not thinking about making community around the food you're eating necessarily. It's just survival mode. So getting people to think beyond that is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jeff had something he wanted to say. And while the microphone's coming back, I wanted to say that as far as, and I was kind of thinking about what you were saying, Neil, and about living in the community and working in the community. That's kind of the Promised Neighborhood example. So in Harlem, they certainly, they require all of their folks to live in the same neighborhood that they work in. So the schools have, it's a school-based initiative basically with all the surround supports, but everybody that works in the Promise Neighborhood Initiative lives in Harlem. In addition to that, they're living next door to folks that they're working with, and so that's a part of that kind of thing. They also have I forget what the percentage is, but the folks that go through the program that are part of the cradle to career and go off to college, they come back to work because they were so appreciative of what happened. So that's the rubbing the shoulders, that's being there, that's understanding each other. And I agree with you, Sarah. Survival mode does not, I can't put in my calendar that I'm going to go to a meeting at 7 o'clock on Thursday, especially if, number one, I got to feed my kids. I'm not sure what I'm going to eat. I'm not sure if I can fix it, or when am I going to, get my kids' project done, or when am I going to be able to sleep because I'm working 2 jobs. So, yeah, I completely get it.
Yeah. Well, and I think everybody's, saying a lot of the same things. And to Loretta's point earlier, the question about, or the statement about meeting these folks where they're at. And I think a powerful tool that we can use are through our neighborhood associations. And I'll give you an example. It's a small example, but it's an example nonetheless. The bridge dinner. So I'm one of the organizers and one of the original group that started that bridge dinner, and the 2 neighborhoods that are adjacent to it, Riverside Normal City, as well as Old West End, came to us with an idea last year that we jumped all over, and that was to provide food vouchers for folks in the neighborhood. And we gave those food vouchers to those neighborhood associations for them to distribute those to the residents in their neighborhood. And we had quite a few, particularly from Old West End, that redeemed those free food coupons for vendors at the bridge dinner. That's just one touch, but it starts to go towards building that trust and to destigmatize there's shame that comes along with this, and to destigmatize that, to start to remove some of that, we can all play a part in that, and in understanding that in this community, unfortunately, it's normal.
Thank you. We're going to cut it off here because we promised that we would at this point, and we have a whole room full of folks that are organizations, agencies, and if you have time and want to just pop in there, you may just want to go for the goodies. There is some nice food in there as well as some drink, and maybe you're just thirsty, or you can talk to some of these folks or talk to each other. Second Harvest has a couple of tables in there. We are spouting out our Big Idea Initiative, and so that's out there, as well as Forward Steps, which we do the Getting Ahead and Just Getting By World, and that's a anti-poverty initiative. And it really, I'll tell you what, when I facilitated the class here when I first came to Muncie, I heard a lot of the things that you're saying, Sarah, about finding out things. The first thing that folks would do when they were taking that class, they'd come into the room and they start sharing with each other. Oh, I found out about this. I found out about this. Let me tell you how to do this. Let's talk about this. And their phones, and they were sharing links, and they were helping each other. And I learned a lot of things about Muncie from the class. And so if you want to understand more about that initiative, as well as how to be an ally, which is just basically a trusted friend to someone who's going through that class, I think we have a table out there. So if you want to, this is your call to action. If you want to go and find out about how to volunteer, if you want, maybe you just don't have time to volunteer right now, but you are willing to pull out that checkbook or that credit card. We got, folks are going to accept donations in there, but more than that, just find out what's going on. And if you have a great idea about how to, how to collaborate and communicate and make some strides toward this, that's all we can do is continue this conversation and keep talking. And boy, Dave, thanks for being here and for, doing this film, because it sparked this conversation, and we appreciate it. So let's give Dave and all the panelists a round of applause.